You know when they click through to the send it's about to be a slow beat run. Everybody know the drop when I'm in it. Drop the top when I'm in it. Everybody drop when I'm in it. Yeah, I go so good. Everybody know I'm on. You know when they click through to the system, it's supposed to be a I've been coming up hot for a minute. Everybody know the drop when I'm in it. Drop the top when I'm in it. Everybody know the drop when I'm in it. Yeah, I go so good. Everybody know I'm on. You know when they click through to the system, it's about to be a slow beat run. I've been coming up hot for a minute.
And we're live. Welcome aboard the Soul Train, everybody. We got a special, absolute special guest today. My good friend and not a fellow Georgia Tech grad. If I had to redo my life all over again, I probably would have worked a little bit harder to try to go to a school like that, but I did it. And so you have to reap what you sow. Is that right? Anyway, what a horrific intro I just gave there. Regardless, what we have done for today's show is we have assembled an elite guest of experts within the industry, excluding myself. I'm just here to play. I'm here to LARP as the narrator of the show. It's live action role play for those of you that are wondering about that acronym there. And so I have myself. My name is Matt Martin. Obviously, I have this channel called The YouTube, and Absolutely, just I love it. I love it. Jason Trailer, I'm gonna whoop your ass. You better stop, sir. How are you doing, man? How are you doing? Good to see you in here. I know this is typical on your off time. So anyway, I got diverted. So also is the real experts that I have here. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off with the sports turf king, Mr. Ryan DeMay himself. And there's a reason why we have picked Ryan DeMay in this topic. Ryan DeMay is a multi-decade turf manager on. Ryan, tell us a little bit about yourself. How about that?
Oh boy, over 2 decades in the business. About 2/3 of that in golf, another third in sports turf. Grown every grass, not every grass that you can think of. Let me see what I'm missing here. Zoysia, Seashore Past Pound. Those are the two I'm missing right now. Have killed just about every grass that I've ever grown too. So very good at that. I'm just riding the wave, man. Just riding the wave until the next time I kill grass, and I'm going to climb on that board. I'm going to paddle my butt back out to sea, get on the wave again. That's what I'm here to do.
Glad
this
you're
guy
here.
that we're going to talk to tonight. I was going to say, this guy that we're getting ready to talk to tonight, I'm so excited because I think this guy has the same mentality. He is not afraid to go in there and try something and screw something up. And I'm gonna love talking to him.
This is true, and you know, as a general rule of thumb, if you haven't killed grass, you're not doing it right. Right? You're not pushing the limits. You're not pushing the boundaries. You haven't explored what those outer thresholds are. And speaking of pushing outer thresholds, let's talk to the lawn care guy who does things in lawn care that most people aren't supposed to do, and that would be the Green Doc himself. Ray, talk to us. Tell us about yourself.
He can't hear anything you're saying right now, Matt. He's got some issues we're working on.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Well, why don't you speak for him real quick? You give him a quick intro. If you were going to introduce Ray at the Ray, Comedy Central roast, how would you introduce Ray, Matt?
I would say Ray is boy, that's really on the spot. I'd need a minute to think about that for the Comedy Central roast. But I would say Ray is the guy who has such a fine attention to detail that it's almost painful at times. That it's just, he is so far into the level of extreme, which is bizarre because he's extreme in the simplest of ways, right? He takes simplicity and then extrapolates it into extremes, right? So literally it's golf course style turfgrass management applied in lawn care.
Are you talking about me?
No, I'm talking about Ray. Who are you talking to, Bryan?
I don't know.
Bryan.
I've been wanting to talk, but I didn't get introduced yet. I feel like
podcast. Do we? All right. Can we hand Bryan the talking stick now? Here you go.
I'm here. Bryan, tell us about yourself. Talkie stick guy.
I'm Bryan. I'm a homeowner. I bought a house a year and a half ago. No, 2.5 years ago, and was on Reddit all day at work, and got into lawn care. Then got into YouTube lawn care. Then got into the Grass Factor. Then got into the Lawn Forum, and wound up here somewhere. And now I don't get on Reddit or get on lawn care YouTube really anymore, and just hang out with degenerates on my phone all day long, much to my wife's dismay. So
that's a great intro. Let's talk about what you actually do in the real world, and divulge as much information as you possibly can. I wasn't kidding when I said he's a. Yeah, go ahead. He is a
crack a beer first,
legit.
Right?
You got to a legit graduate of Georgia Tech University. So we're not dealing with someone with my IQ.
That's not what it's called, but
GPI.
No,
Georgia Tech. Okay, he went to Georgia Technical College. Talk to us about it.
I environmental engineer by trade. Work currently in air quality engineering and deal with the EPA and the Georgia EPD A lot. Worked in industrial wastewater, industrial landfill, pulp and paper previously. Um, so it's funny that I'm into things like lawn care where, people hear environmental engineer and they say, oh, you must, you're a hippie, save the trees. And I was like, that's not really the same thing. My job is to make sure we're following the rules and following the laws. And if we, same, if you read the labels on the things you get and you use them appropriately, people with tie-dye shirts can yell at you, but you're not going to go to jail.
So I'm gonna say a phrase here, and an environmental consultant, whatever that means, told me this one day, and he said, and these are words that I live by. Dilution is the solution to pollution. When you hear that, what is your immediate reaction? Is it visceral? I mean, where are you on that?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's the solution. It might minimize the effects, but getting rid of something is a lot better solution than diluting it. But, that's what I do for work. That's not what I do after 1:30 some days, 4 o'clock some other days, depending on how much I'm working.
If you
So like you
all
would
right,
wash
so-
your, would you go ahead.
Domain. Go ahead.
I was going to say, would you at home, would you wash your car with a phosphate-based soap in the driveway and then hose all the water down the storm drain? Would you do that? I'm
No,
kidding.
I choose not to wash my car because I don't want to spend $8 and it'll just get dirty again. But also,
Duly
if
noted.
I go to an automated car wash, it's their problem, and they're supposed to be following the laws on reclaiming everything. So,
I'm just
that's on
putting,
them.
$7 of those $8 back into the environmental industrial complex, man. Feed
Hey.
the machine. No, seriously though, it is important, and I'll be interested as we go through this, and especially the after show, on getting the opinion of somebody who's not necessarily been on the forefront of agriculture related issues, horticulture related issues, so on and so forth, but you are on the forefront of best practices, right? Because in your industry or your field, like, and are aware of and have to be kind of the safety monitor of sorts. And so I don't know, I think that's where there are a ton of responsible people out there, and they don't get the credit because a lot of people, and I'd be curious to hear this, is like, how many times a year or a week or whatever the time frame is, are you telling people like, hey, like, that's wrong, stop doing that, like that's blatantly wrong? Is that something that is like an everyday occurrence, every week occurrence, every month occurrence? Like how does that work in your side of things?
I mean, it kind of depends, but it could come up once every month. It could come up 5 times a week.
Well, just in your experience, so how frequently is it that you look at something and you're like, oh wow, that's not good?
So where I work now is a production-based facility, and production doesn't care, for the most part, about environmental compliance. They want to get shit done. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that. I don't know. But
I won't tell if you don't tell.
Yeah. So if you're going to say, well, you got to shut down because you didn't fill out this paperwork, they're going to say, well, we'll fill it out tomorrow and we'll make up some numbers. And that, has that happened? I'm sure. Well, they didn't tell us in college. They told everyone we're going to be designing wastewater treatment plants and, go out and look at field studies of trees and stuff like that. They didn't tell you that you're going to be the policeman and everyone's going to hate you for your whole career, and you're going to basically be doing paperwork and Excel files.
Listen, I used to have a company
episodes?
that, okay. I used to have a company that's now out of business. Go ahead.
I have this picture in my head of, no, seriously, I just have this picture in my head of young Bryan sitting in front of the television watching Captain Planet. You remember that? Like all the five
Yeah.
people put their fists together, whatever, and Captain Planet, like I totally saw him must be like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna get all those guys. God, I hate you people. And that's what fueled him to go to Georgia Tech, right? And we also
Yeah,
have to
that's
ask him
true.
about his part-time job he had there. That'll be some good stories too on the end of the show. His part-time job in college. All right, Matt,
Yeah.
I
Oh, yeah.
digress. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I used to have a company. It's out of business now, in case anybody was wondering. But I remember having to do tests for like air permitting and stuff, and walking in and seeing the environmental engineer there, and just pretending like the world is not falling apart around you, and trying to keep a straight face while you're looking her in the eye and saying like, yes, this is good, right? This is good. This is perfectly normal. We're all good here. Everything is right.
I mean,
As
I
in,
saw pictures of where he used to work. It was more of I'd call OSHA on you. I wouldn't call the EPA on you, but that's in the past, and so it doesn't matter.
yeah. There weren't a lot of people getting hurt unless they came to work on drugs that day and decided midday they needed more drugs, and then they stuck their hand into a piece of equipment so that way they could go to the emergency room to get more drugs. But outside of that, it was more of a it was just dusty, right? It was difficult to contain the dust, but
Yeah.
that's neither here nor there.
Right.
All right, so how long ago did you buy the house? I'm sorry
We
to
moved
interrupt.
in October of 2017. So spring of 2018 is when I got into lawn care, I guess. I mean,
So
I cut grass at my
what was
parents' house growing up. So
what was the impetus there from like fall or winter of 17 to 18? Like, did you immediately like look at the lawn and be like, damn it, I'm gonna have to do something with that? Or was it more like a slow process of like, all right, I'll figure, I'll get around to it, and then slowly but surely you were just you just decided that, hey, I'm gonna go all in on this? I mean, what was that process like for you?
uh I mean, when I was younger and when until we moved into the house, I hadn't lived anywhere recently that had a lawn. I was living in an apartment or things like that, like in Atlanta. But before that, when I worked my first job, I was up in Vermont, and we had a yard with our townhouse, and I would begrudgingly mow it once a month, and it would choke out the mower, and you'd have to back up and push the mower down and let it get some air, and then run really fast, and um, so I knew that I didn't want dandelions and like weeds that produce flowers and it to look really crappy. And I also didn't want to pay someone $40. And that the paying someone, that's a mentality that will probably come up 40 times in the next 3 hours. But
I am really interested to learn about your belief system behind spending money for grass in particular. I'm always intrigued when I read and see what you're doing and what you say no to and what you say yes to. And not that anybody's wrong in choosing,
yeah,
what they want to do with their lawn, but I do find it interesting to see people that spend the least but get the most out of it. And I think you do. I think you're definitely one of those people that are like, not, I wouldn't call you frugal. I would just call you very, very productive with what you do spend, right? It's for a
yeah,
reason, and there's a very specific result that's going to come from whatever it is you're doing. So okay, so you have the lawn the first year, and what happens in
right. And
2018?
so when we moved in, and I think John, there's a picture from 2018 of what it looked like essentially when we moved in. Um, there was a probably 4-year-old half empty bag of weed and feed that I sprinkled out in the yard by hand.
No, you didn't.
Like, and then there
Crackhead
was
lawn care right there.
a
Yeah.
half empty. That's when it looked nice. There was a half empty hose end sprayer 1500 weed and feed. Here you go. So this is the front of the house when we moved in.
Is that
I
St.
don't know why
Augustine?
that's supposed to be. Yeah, I mean the whole yard was St. Augustine except for a strip of zoysia by the road. That right there is probably mainly sedge and dirt.
Yeah, I was
Um,
gonna say that's the majority of that is dirt. It looks like you do have some yellow or purple sedge in there as well.
I don't know why the
Mm.
people decided to plant 8 dogwoods in a circle in the middle of the front yard. But you know,
It
but
meant
Signal the
something
aliens,
to
dude.
them.
yeah, and there was a bird bath in the middle somewhere. But so yeah, the very first thing I did was try to find the cheapest Honda brand push mower I could find on Craigslist.
Why
Um,
Honda?
because Honda's better, right? I don't know. That's just what, we had a Honda HRX, whatever, like from 2005 when I was growing up. So, I mean, it's just, you always want to get a Honda engine, but I got a Honda. So it was a Honda commercial push mower, not self-propelled, steel deck with a bagger. And
It weighed 188 pounds.
yeah, which foreshadowing eventually bent the shaft on a root. So, more roots will come up later also. Um, and then just
Roots.
roots. And so I just started cutting the grass 2 days a week as high as it would go, because that's what a certain someone that had St. Augustine on YouTube told me to do.
I know that guy.
And so when I was on Reddit, the people were talking about Milo and LCN, and I'm like, I don't know what any of this means. I don't even really know what Reddit is. I'm trying to get control of this, and then so I looked things up.
That's
and
what I
then,
was wondering. Are you a Reddit nerd? Like, is that where you
Not
find yourself identifying with most strongly as a community?
not anymore. I haven't been on Reddit in probably 2 years since finding the Lawn Forum Discord.
I love Reddit. I'll self-admitted. Love Reddit. Plenty of great
I
content.
I
on there
I use
every day.
my job, especially the job that I had previously at the same organization. I work for the government, so words out. Uh, Very slow. So I would have my work computer and my personal laptop off to the side and just be on Reddit all day long. Tax dollars coming in, paying the salary. Brian's on Reddit all day.
It's
So
fine.
you
We won't
learn
Way to
tell
do it
anyone.
right there.
Yeah, that was
Oops.
3 years ago. Are the statute of limitations up by now? Um,
You might have to talk to a lawyer after this. Maybe. I don't know.
yeah. Okay. I can
Do you
find
need to go to the Reddit for legal advice
one.
and
And
ask?
I need to go ahead and give a plug to the Lawn Forum. TheLawnForum.com is a great place for people getting started and advance it. I mean, there's people on there like Pete1313 who just take things to the extreme, with a greens mower out there on his Kentucky bluegrass and zinc sulfate and manganese sulfate applications that he's tinkering with in his garage before he goes and sprays it. And then, you've got people who will get their feelings hurt over a bad word, and all in the same space. And everyone tends to get along actually fairly well for the diversity of the group that's there. So shout out to John Ware for wrangling that group of people, and Gibby, of course, for starting the Lawn Forum Discord. And I'm not going to give out the link to that right now, but it's out there. And if you are a member of the Lawn Forum, it probably doesn't take a whole lot of digging to be able to find it. And it's awesome how the community of people have come together. And you'll hear us talk about it a lot. You'll hear us talk positively about it a lot because obviously that's how we ended up getting to know all of each other, really, is due to the Lawn Forum Discord. Here's the website here, and it covers kind of any and everything. The Lawn of the Month competitions every month are always pretty good. There's always some great looking properties in there. I think I saw John Teague comment that he was the 2-time Lawn of the Month and reigning Stripe Off champion. So I know he's real proud of that. And I think Pete 1313 is winning right here, and he really just look at that. Look at that. That's pretty damn
Those
slick
cool
right
season
there.
guys have it so easy.
When it comes to dark colors like that, in this time of year, yes, it is that easy. Now, where it takes a man to grow cool season grass is going to be after the 4th of July.
Not even after the 4th of July.
Depending on where you live.
Yeah, I would say June the 4th, really.
Our professor at Ohio State put it best. My dead grandmother could grow grass until Memorial Day. After that, you need a professional.
There you go. And that is 1,000% true. And that's when really, from Memorial Day to what is it? Memorial Day to Labor Day really is when Bermuda shines. I mean, there's not really anything you can do to mess it up, right? Except put like atrazine or something on it in the middle of summer, and that's what it does.
Accepted.
Yeah, and while we're kind of moving into that territory there, where we're bragging on cool season grass and all that fun stuff, Bryan, I'm just curious of your experience since 2018. I know that's not a long time to really try and push the limits on what you do on your property there, but if you had to say, what was your biggest fail up to this point on your property?
I mean, so I had St. Augustine. That's what the house, had when I lived there, and it was very, very shady. Still is somewhat shady. But I knew after a while, and I play golf pretty frequently and played sports growing up, that I wanted shortcut turf. I've got 2 dogs that play fetch all day, and they're herding dogs, and so they shred the ground. And St. Augustine, doesn't heal up super quickly, and especially in the wintertime when they're still playing fetch and shredding, and ripping stolons out of the ground and things like that. I wanted something that could cut short and, would heal itself. And so I decided to kill all my grass and, mixed up a concoction of essentially every herbicide that I had on hand, and made a little decimal place error on a pretty potent chemical, MSM.
It's fine.
turf.
No one does that. It's fine.
What
Never
chemical?
happens to anyone.
MSM, so metsulfuron methyl.
Metsulfuron methyl. Yep, that's a fun one. And you did what with metsulfuron methyl?
So I was going for the 0.5 ounce per acre rate, 0.5 ounce per acre, along with Celsius at 5 ounces per acre, glyphosate, and crossbow. Why not? I mean, I just throw it all in there. More is better. But then when I was using Google on my phone to convert, 0.5 ounces per acre to grams, because, I was 4,000 square feet. I blame Google. I put in 0.5 ounces to grams, and it read it as 5 ounces to grams. And I just used the number that it gave me, which was, I think, was 13 grams for the 4,000. So essentially, I did 10 times the rate that I was trying to do for MSM.
With metsulfuron methyl, which is, all right, so tell us what ended up happening here. And as a general rule of thumb, this is not written in stone, but as a general rule of thumb, with metsulfuron methyl, a 1/2 ounce kills weeds, 1 ounce kills trees, 2 ounces is a sterilant, is kind of the adage there that you go with. But tell us what specifically happened in your case, and then we can dive in and try and pick apart why you experienced the things you experienced.
Yeah, so I mean, all of the St. Augustine and zoysia that I had died over 2 weeks. Uh, I sprayed it again with glyphosate 2 weeks later, just to make sure, gotta make sure everything's really dead. Um, and then I not tilled up, but kind of ran a cultivator loosely off the top to scrape up all the St. Augustine stolons. Brought in some sand to level. So yeah, this picture is what it was like when we moved in. Um, so, but brought in sand to level and then laid TifTuf Bermuda sod. Uh, hoping that the grass that I had killed and the MSM I used wasn't gonna kill my $2,000 worth of brand new sod. Uh, and luckily it did not, and I have a halfway decently looking lawn right now. I wish it was, I know.
So in effect, you applied a 5 ounce per acre rate of metsulfuron methyl because of a Google Math error, right? And in typically, I would say that would be disastrous. And I remember when this happened, you were talking to all of us about it, and I think I think I was probably the most optimistic about it. Is
Yeah,
that true?
so I talked to you and Ray and and a certain person from the Indianapolis area on the lawn forum uh,
What's up, G
about
man?
it. Yeah. Um,
We see you.
and I got three different reactions. So I got from Ray. Ray, can you hear us now?
I sure can. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah.
Bloody
So,
hell.
Ray.
Oh my God. Hey.
So when I realized that I had put down the 5 ounce per acre rate, it was about 5 in the afternoon. I was going to eat it with my parents, and so I'm freaking out. Ray says, go find, whatever it was, 3 tons of activated carbon. Here's a link to a place 2 hours from you, you know. And I say, well, I drive a Nissan Altima. I can't really get 2 tons of activated carbon. Um, G-Man says, go rent a sod. Maybe you can cut it out before it gets into the soil. And then Matt says, it'll probably be okay.
All right. So you opted and how long after application? So, one of the first things I think everybody kind of said was go ahead and kick on your irrigation and apply the old adage, dilution is the solution to pollution, right? How long after
Wrong.
your application did you flip on the sprinklers?
So actually, I didn't do that at first. I had sprayed, and then when I got back home, it was like 8 o'clock, and I cut as much of the grass off, scalped it with the bag mower as possible. So maybe that's why, I don't have sterile soil and a dead pecan tree and a dead crepe myrtle and, a divorce or something like that. But yeah, I knew that I didn't want to get the MSM into the soil, so I scalped the St. Augustine as low as I could with my bagger.
Very good. Very good. The way you thought that through is probably the best thing you could have done is scalp that up. I don't want to know what you did with the clipping, so don't ask me. I'm not going to ask you what you did with it. But all right, so moving on from there, you did this, and then you went ahead, you ran your cultipack or whatever it is you did, and you started laying sod. How long after that application?
It was So these pictures are from 2019 when I just did one pallet of sod in an area that was
Yep.
really bad. The renovation for the whole yard was in 2020, and it was probably we laid sod on May 15th, and I think I had killed the grass on April 10th, April 5th. So it was like a month after spraying to when I laid sod. Um, one of the reasons I one of the reasons it took so long is I needed to redo my irrigation. For some reason, the people had only installed it for 2/3 of the yard, which did not make sense. Um, so like where this picture is from, down in the bottom left, there is now a head, but there was not an irrigation head. The only, basically from that pecan tree into the road were irrigated. This other half was not. So it hasn't, I have no idea why. But I, again, didn't want to spend the money to rent a trencher. And so I spent 3 days hand digging with a trenching shovel, 200 feet of irrigation line. And there's some pictures of the rocks and bricks. Maybe my house was built on top of an old landfill, or maybe back in the 40s they just didn't care, or maybe they still don't care now. But so these are the kind of things that I pulled out of my yard, that the grass had been growing on top of. There's this one, there's another one with just piles and piles of bricks and terracotta pipes that I pulled out. I don't know why. But yeah, the irrigation, and then laid sod, and luckily had some friends to help me lay sod.
Did you
is
find
this
out
normal?
where the source of the pipes were? No, that's not normal. Did you find what the source of the pipes were? Like, were they running to your house, from your house? Do you know?
The
The
terracotta
last time,
pipes?
yeah, the last time I've seen clay pipes like that was actually part of a diversion plan for a stream that they had raised the grade on a piece of property, and they were using old clay pipes like that to run the water from the stream right underneath this guy's property. And then when the pipe collapsed, that was when they realized what its function was. So I'm curious if you ever discovered what the function of that clay pipe was.
No, so I mean it was, mainly like broken terracotta, and then but I mean there's bricks with mortar on them, and some of this stuff, and this is just rocks. That's two gorilla cartfuls of rocks that I pulled out of a 6-inch trench, you know. So I don't know when my house is
Wow.
from the 40s. I don't know if when they built it, they just threw everything into the yard and then brought in an inch of topsoil, and then over time people have just brought in more. I have no idea, but it was definitely a pain in the butt to dig through by hand. 3 days of 4 hours after work every day versus I could, 200 feet of trench I could have done in like 15 minutes with a trencher.
Trencher would
But
not
I
have
wanted to
length what
say
you
I
just
wanted to
went through.
save that $150. I didn't want to spend the $150.
Bless your heart. I really don't know what to say to you about that, but good on you, sir. I like this comment that came in that said, "Respect for digging that by hand like a classic cheapskate engineer." That sounds like a good one.
Thank you, Ben. I don't know you, but thank you.
So all right. Hey, I'm gonna kind of circle back to the whole metsulfuron methyl thing, and so one of the specific pieces of metsulfuron methyl, when you take a look at the label, is the chance for persistence and the affinity for high pH soil, right? So can we fire up some of his soil tests here to take a look at what he's working with? And for the people that follow along with old wives' tales, when you have lots of trees on your property too, that always means you have acidic soil, right? But let's take a look at this and see exactly what we got. If we have any of your soil tests, I don't know. Oh, here we go.
So this
All right.
is
This is 2018.
yeah. So this is one of the first things when I started was people are like, get a soil test, and I was like, okay. So I took a soil sample and took it to University of Georgia extension office in town, and paid $9, and they sent me this a week later.
And then here's 2020.
So,
Wowzers.
this pH dropped, So the one thing in 2019, which I didn't do a soil test, I think I used one bag of Organite for my 4,000 square foot yard, and that was the only fertilizer I used. And then I started to use pre-emergent in 2019. So, and I used the granular high yield with dimension or something like that. Whatever that guy down in Bradenton had in his email link, I clicked on it, but bought it locally.
And then we've got a waypoint also from 2020. What's the so the first one, Brian, from UGA was in March. When did you do the waypoint?
It was the same exact soil.
So here's another one. Like there's the pH at 5.7.
Right.
This one's
And
at
6.4.
6.4.
Same,
No, look at-
same
you know,
soil.
Look at the phosphorus level. So look how much more that Mela 3 picks up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're at 60 parts per million on your Malic 1, and then your Malic 3. Yeah, you're really chooching there at 101 parts per million.
So is that kind of a rough estimate to go from pounds per acre to ppm is divided by 2, roughly?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's interesting seeing your zinc so high too. Are your pecan trees producing every year?
They do. This past year, especially when I renoed and irrigated the hell out of the yard, they produced a lot more. But the first couple years, they were still producing some, but not, nothing. Quit your job and pick up pecans and sell them to China for $12 a pound.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I just wonder with you having that zinc tree, I wonder if some of the old school people were consistently fertilizing it, because that's really it's kind of synonymous with pecan growing, right? Is get down your zinc, get down your zinc, get down your zinc, get down your zinc, get down your zinc. It's just that's some Georgia talk right there. It's like, oh, you got a pecan orchard? How much zinc you throwing down? What kind of zinc are you using? So it's funny to see such high zinc levels on your test. It kind of goes with that and where you are. And considering you don't have any other fruit trees, I bet they were really in prior to you. I bet they were really into that. So it's kind of interesting because you went from a 6.0 on one test in 2018 to a 5.7 in another test in 2020, and of that same batch, now you've got a 6.4 pH. That is pretty wildly different. Everything else looks to be pretty much in line. I would expect to see slightly higher values on a Malic 3 test just because of the strength of the acid used. Go ahead.
So this is 2020. We have a 2021 test as well.
Oh, snap. Let's take a look at this.
Oh,
So here's
yes.
Data is
2021.
king.
Go back for a second, real quick.
2020,
Wow.
2021.
So
Whoa.
I can theorize here too. So it makes sense for you losing your potassium if you did a reno and you were irrigating heavier for your reno.
Yeah,
You can leach out a lot of that potassium if you're not replacing it. Do you know how much potassium you applied last year?
So last year I only used triple 13 from Lowe's, and probably I think I only used one 40-pound bag for the whole year over 5,000 square feet. So 8 pounds per 1,000 over the course of the whole year of triple 13. So, a pound.
About a pound.
Pound.
So,
40
that was
parts
it?
per million.
I think so. I don't know.
Wow. Okay.
That's a fair amount of potassium loss. But you
That's
do
what I'm saying,
have low
that's not
CECs too.
And this was also
Yeah.
the year that he seriously got into. Last year, he seriously got into cutting real low as well,
Right.
because that's
So
when you got your greens more.
yeah, so this 2021, I did that a month ago, and I guess before I put out anything this year, and then the 2020 was before I renovated. So, when I had St. Augustine, and that was, so I don't know. I'm not the expert here. Bermuda, going from St. Augustine and Zoysia to Bermuda, I do different turf grasses, use nutrients differently. Does anyone
Yes.
actually know anything?
Yes. Were you asking a question there? It was so
No.
dry
Yeah.
in the way you were asking the question.
Yeah,
It
it
went
was-
right over my head. You need to
Well-
continue to suck on those suds there, buddy.
How does
I
St.
know.
Aug
Okay.
use nutrients versus Bermuda?
It's going to be a higher
Okay.
potassium load than is compared to Bermuda. A higher potassium
Yeah.
removal rate.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. It's you're going to take out a lot of nutrients from the soil, and the other one that I'm kind of watching is how, believe it or not, even your zinc went down as well, because John, can we flip back to last year's?
There's 2020,
Okay, 2020. Okay, 2021.
and here is
Uh,
2021.
Did you add any
2021, okay.
additional sand in between then?
So when I renoed and removed as much St. Augustine, I brought in 5 tons of sand for 4,000 square feet.
So your
So, like,
2021
a
test
little over a quarter inch.
reflects your
What'd you say?
2021 test reflects with the sand, and your 2020 test reflects with no sand.
Correct.
There you
And
go.
of the rocks you pulled out, was there a significant amount of limestone in that? Spin was asking that. It looked like most of it was chunks of concrete.
There were some
Brick.
chunks of
Bricks
concrete
or
and bricks,
something.
and then
Yeah.
the rocks looked more like
That's
it's like,
bricks.
I don't know,
Oh dear.
granite. The other rock picture that has the hat on top, I don't know, it's like gravel and stuff.
Okay. So it makes sense seeing all of your nutrient levels diluted like that, kind of across the board, would make sense with you having an additional sand profile in there. Still, if you think
Yeah.
about it, you're losing what is that? Approximately 80 pounds an acre of potassium, which would make sense over a 40,000 square foot over a 4,000 square foot yard with, I don't know, at a quarter inch of sand. Do you think you pulled this? Was it pretty even where you had your sand distribution, or were some areas closer to like 6 inches and then other areas were closer to like nothing?
Yeah, the latter. I mean, I was trying to level, where I dug the irrigation and where I pulled out block pieces of concrete, needed, more sand. So this is what the guy at the landscape supply house called sandy topsoil.
Yeah, that's
Or-
right. That's right.
I was like,
That's the brown dirt.
I asked for mason sand, and he's like, I can sell you mason sand, but I got this for half the price. And I was like, okay, bring it on down.
We call this
that's
sandy
how-
topsoil.
What is this?
I
That's how
love
I-
this right here. I love
That's
that.
how I leveled it.
That's Georgia right there.
So I was lucky enough because they dropped it off in my driveway, and I now have a fence, but I could remove a 16-foot section of fence, and then had my dad's lawn tractor and a trailer to essentially drive it from the driveway around the cul-de-sac and into the backyard and dump it, and then pulled the old trick of, run into the piles with the mower deck to knock them down, and then level it out with my pallet and tree stump level.
Lord have mercy, Bryan.
I was gonna say the
The
police would probably call for a psych eval on him.
They've got bigger
Good Lord.
issues around my house.
Man, I
Not in
don't
my- not
even know
in-
what to say.
Not in my house, around my house.
What about? I mean, why not just use like a chain link fence just because you had the pallet?
Yeah, I didn't have a chain link fence.
Okay.
I had a pallet. I had a stump. I had some rope. You know,
That's some nice
The
looking
most
rope
expensive-
there. I'm glad you had that.
that's from Harbor Freight. The most expensive thing is probably that carabiner. That's probably like a $15 carabiner from REI. Everything else probably costs $15 total.
I mean, it took you 50 years to grow that stump. There's a lot of equity in that stump, dude. Don't sell it short. All right.
Yeah, is that a
Actually-
sod pallet that you're using there too?
Yeah, so the previous year, I had laid 2 pallets of sod in the area that was initially really barren. And so I had the pallets left over. And then now I have 9 pallets left over leaning against my tree. It's now, a year later.
You don't get deposit back for those for your sod pallets?
No? Is that a thing? Is it like
Really?
That is a thing.
that's-
Oh boy,
that is a
Bryan,
thing.
you're leaving money
Bryan,
on
I
the
just-
table.
What? How many pallets you got?
I got 9.
9. So that's going to be
That's
somewhere
$18.
between like 10. Oh no, more than that. It's usually. I mean, up here in Canada, it's $10 to $15 a pallet for deposit on sod pallets.
What?
Well, I mean, I need to keep at least
Take it back to
one.
the sod farm.
I need
Take
to
it back to
keep-
the
I need
sod
to
farm.
keep
You get 10,
one.
$15 back.
Because I gotta keep my leveling drag, so I can take 8 back and keep 1.
Yeah. Don't take it to like the pallet recycling place. Then you'll only get $2. Call the sod farm up and see if they have a pallet deposit because you probably paid that.
Yeah,
don't
I think it's site 1. We always got $2 back for a pallet.
It wasn't on my invoice. I got it directly from Super Sod.
All right, I'm gonna look it up while you're John here. Let's see.
Matt Roberts said you only get $2 a pallet back in Georgia. It's all we get back in Tennessee too. Well, at least through site 1, we only get $2 a pallet back. You said you
Yeah,
got
every
that
sod
direct from
farm-
Super Sod. Why didn't you get it from like NG Turf? I love those guys.
There's a Super Sod farm like 15 minutes from our house down the interstate. I don't know. They had
I'm
TifTuf
just curious.
Bermuda.
I was just curious.
TifTuf seemed to be the cool thing. Although now that I'm into grass, nobody cares about it. They all care about TifGrand.
Tiff Grand, Tiff Tough, it's all a meme.
So, my wife is from Tifton, so I think that I don't know. Does that make it halfway cool? I'm not sure.
Very romantic. I'm sure she's thrilled.
Yeah,
She
how
does
much
not
is Tiff
care
Tough?
at all?
How did what was it? What was I gonna say? Oh, is TifTuf blasted with radioactive cobalt like
No.
Tiff
So
Sport?
I read into that more. I thought it was, but I read into that more last week, and that was Tiff Eagle, I think, is the one that they took. Maybe it wasn't TifTuf. That was just more of like a selective breeding process over, and testing for drought tolerance. Yeah, I think
So
maybe it
Sport-
was Tiff Grand. One of
Tiff
them.
Sport is the I think is the one that is mid iron blasted with the cobalt.
Yeah.
I don't.
Cobalt.
I did not know. So that was selective breeding. But what was the Tiff Eagle thing? Like that's where they started. Isn't Tiff Eagle a dwarf?
Tiff
It's an
Eagle is
ultra dwarf.
an
Tiff Eagle is
ultra dwarf.
ultra dwarf. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a green grass.
Yeah.
But Tiff,
Yeah, it's a
Tiff
green
Grand,
grass.
So you settled on TifTuf just because it was cool, or did you was there any other thought behind? And if there wasn't, it's fine. I mean, but was there any other thought behind selecting and choosing that particular cultivar?
I mean, so the first year when I actually bought one pallet and laid it and then went and bought another one. I wanted something that I could go pick up. I borrowed someone's truck and went and bought one pallet of sod and picked it up myself. So I'm not sure what all they have at the farm down in Fort Valley, Georgia. But I don't think I know, was it Pike Creek down in Adel, Georgia, has like everything, but that's,
Everything.
2 hours away versus 25 minutes away.
If you had to do it all over again, would you continue with TifTuf or would you make a change?
Does the tree stay where it is? Or does the tree
I don't know.
get to
You tell
go
me.
away?
You tell me. If you had to do it all over again, what would you do?
If I could have my way, I would remove that pecan tree and I would be perfectly happy with TifTuf. So this picture is probably from
April.
noon. Yeah, April, like this year. So, just a couple weeks ago from around noon. And that back corner is, it was great last year when I laid the sod. And then this year, it's kind of just dirt. It's also where the dogs run and like lunge and jump and land next to the fence. So this is in the evening, so it gets, 45 minutes of sunshine in that one spot over there. This is probably in the fall last year. You can see a lot of dog pee spots, so that's another issue I have is one of my dogs, the darker one on the left, will pee in the flower beds. The other one with the long tail just goes in the yard. But that's a Bryan problem. That's not a ag problem.
All right. So before we
tree-
get into, I was just going to say, before we start moving into, kind of what your plan is for the season, we start picking apart whatever your ideas are. What do you set up with? What's your equipment situation like? And yeah, give us a little foundation there, so that way we know what you're working with soil test wise, we know what you're working
Yeah.
with equipment wise, and then we can build upon that.
Yeah. So John, I don't know if you can pull up, there's a PDF that essentially has all of the chemicals and everything I have on hand, but I have a 21-inch Husqvarna push mower with a bag and a 20-inch McLean reel mower from 1981 that I got for free, and a John Deere 180E 18-inch greens mower with a grass catcher that I did not get for free. But I did get it from someone locally who got it on auction. So I got it for the longer I have it, what seems like a better and better price every time.
Is
A
this
shrewd
what you're talking about,
negotiator, no
Bryan?
doubt.
Yeah, so here we go. So, we can get into that three-letter word towards the top there if we want to.
Talking about DEF?
Yeah, diesel fuel.
Is that
Diesel
is that a
exhaust
problem? Does somebody have a
fluid.
problem? Yeah, does
Diesel
anybody have a
exhaust
problem with that
fluid.
or something?
I have no problem with that.
I'm not
Because
failing to see the problem either.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
because that's chemically pure urea. In fact, it's even more pure than fertilizer grade urea.
That's right.
So I would have no problem with this if somebody had no ability to get sprayable low biuret urea. I'd have no trouble with it. I'd say go for it. If you can go down to the truck stop or Walmart or whatever and pick up 5-gallon or 2.5-gallon bottles of DEF, that is fine and good because 9.5 ounces of DEF applies 1/10 of a pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square foot.
That's right.
The good old
And I
diesel
Good
exhaust
stuff.
fluid.
and I paid $7 for 2.5 gallons at Walmart. It's a internationally regulated. It's used across the world and is, probably, I would trust that it is, what is it, 32.5% urea and the rest deionized water. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I don't think the Walmart brand, I don't think they're sneaking in other stuff because urea and water are probably both pretty cheap, and even selling it for $7 for 2.5 gallons. I mean, they're still making money somewhere. So why add something that costs more than water?
Actually, the standards for the purity of both the water and the urea are extremely high when it's being used for catalytic reduction of diesel emissions. I mean, the standards are super high in that if somebody, for example, were to mix fertilizer grade urea with water and try to use it instead of the manufactured DEF, they would get a check engine light fairly immediately. So that tells you something. It is super high quality urea.
No, I agree, and I mean, in my job, deal with diesel oxidation catalyst and selective catalytic reduction to
Mm-hmm.
remove NOx from diesel
Right?
generators and natural gas generators. So it's the same exact technology on those big 2.5 megawatt generators that go on in a diesel truck, and they just
Mm-hmm.
happen to have a 330-gallon tote of DEF instead of a whatever half gallon or whatever a diesel truck carries on it. So
Yeah, it's about like a gallon something, in a reservoir, right next to the fuel fill.
yeah, and
But
I think when I read that they get like, what, like 800 or 1,000 miles per whatever. I mean, I don't have a diesel truck, so I'm not entirely sure, but so yeah,
yeah,
so I use um but yeah, real mowing, rotary mower to pick up the debris, and
mm,
you know, cheap fertilizer. I bought that Lebanon fertilizer a couple weeks ago. I haven't put it down yet. Um, hey, Asami. And then, as you can see, the main warm season turf herbicides, some cheap Spectracide, three-way, four-way, whatever you want to call it, from Lowe's. The cheapest possible fungicides that may or may not work, and some insecticides. Uh, you know, a little bit of everything.
Do you have a hard time with ticks down there, Brian?
We do not in our yard, um, but like, if you're hiking or something, definitely. I haven't really ever picked any off of my dogs from the yard. They're also on, flea and
Sure.
tick and heartworm medication, but generally, so last year, my main thing was whenever, oh, I didn't even put on there that I have T-Nex, so that, plant growth regulator. So whenever I would spray T-Nex, I would spray T-Nex and Feature and Talstar, and I would spray, whenever my growing degree days, were up 255 or whatever it is, I would spray all three of those and then put out, the generic triple 13 at a third of a pound every month or so. Thinking I knew what I was doing, but realizing I don't really know what I'm doing.
I just got looped into a TikTok video there. If anybody was wondering, yes, that's exactly what that was. And the people in the comments that suggested that is exactly what happened. I don't know how I always get into that, but somehow, some way, I end up having to do this. So I apologize. I was somewhat listening to what you were saying, but at least with this list here, I'm able to put together a pretty good idea of what you've been doing. And I caught, so you basically generic triple 13 is kind of what you're doing at a third of a pound.
That's what I did last year.
Every so often.
Yeah. So there's that picture, and it's from I don't know. Yeah, if ammonium sulfate, muriate of potash, diammonium phosphate, and urea. So in the next picture of it, you can see that it's about as big as rock salt. So it tends to stay on top of the grass for a long time.
Oh God. Wow.
Yeah, that is pretty good sized. Wow.
That's 300. That's 300 SGN right there.
I have normal sized hands for reference.
Do you?
Okay.
Do you?
I'm
have
glad you
normal
cleared
size
that up.
hands? Yeah, I was real worried about it.
I mean, like normal for me, I guess, but sample size of 1. So
Yeah, I mean that looks like that definitely looks like a triple 13. There's no doubt about it.
yeah.
So, in terms of what you're doing this year, I guess you're making the transition over to the MD 18318. Is that the game plan? I apologize if you're having to repeat this.
No, so I mean that I bought that. I looked for a quote unquote greens grade fertilizer in a 101-ish analysis. And found this locally, and so I bought a couple of bags, and I know nothing about it. It had Methex, whatever trademark, Lebanon technology.
Yeah, so Methex is going to
I included the
be
label in there, John.
Methex is going to be the methylene urea. Oh crap! I just accidentally held a comment. I think I got it back. I don't know. I messed that up. Another moderator handled it. Great. Okay, because I hit the wrong thing. So Methex is just methylene urea. Nothing too terribly complicated there. Is there anything different with Methex? Is that a short chain methylene urea? Is that kind of what their claim to fame is with it, or is there anything different with it, or is it just mashed
Plain old methylene urea?
Just straight up methylene urea. Okay. So it is. It's a straight methylene urea 18318. I mean, really, you can't go wrong with that. Based on what we saw in your soil test there, it looks like you have adequate phosphorus. So, not really just a demanding reason to continue to apply a significant amount of phosphorus like a 1-to-1-to-1 in the situation you got. Can you? Yeah, right. You can. But are you absolutely hell-bent in needing to do it? Probably not. All right, let's see here. Hey, it's got a little sulfamag in it. That's interesting.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
I like sulfamag. It's kind of a fun one because it's a potassium that you can apply that elicits a color response, right? And that it makes you feel good about getting down your potassium from sulfamag. Assuming you don't already have high magnesium soils, and then at that point you're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot with it. But you do what you do. It's got a little ferric oxide. Ain't really going to help you a whole lot there. And just a fraction of it as water soluble iron. So do you see that on the label right there, Bryan, where it has total iron at 1.5%, but it only has 0.15% of water soluble iron?
Yeah.
It's because the overwhelming majority of that is the ferric oxide. A little urea, a little kelp meal, some potassium humate, some manganese sulfate. Okay. So no, that's not a bad little fertilizer. I like that.
I mean, there weren't a lot of options. I went to Site One a couple years ago, and they, pulled their thing. Go, you're asking about something that costs $50. Get out of here. We don't want to waste our time. Um, Not to throw shade at Site One, but I went to Central Irrigation, I think is what it was called. I guess they
Yeah,
have,
Central Turf and Irrigation.
yeah, they have a handful of places around the country, and the guy was super nice, and I called and asked if they had this, and he said, yeah, and I said, all right, I'll come down, and we talked, and it was, I didn't feel like a jerk for wasting his time and spending $100, but I also felt a
Yeah,
little out of place.
I love Central Turf and Irrigation. A colleague of mine has been around there for a while now. His name is I can't even remember his name. John Huber, who I've known for many years now. Is he kind of heads up the turf department, or at least product development piece of it over at Central Turf, and I know they're working really hard as far as their product offering, and so it's been really cool to see the work that John Huber and Jeff Thrasher are doing over there. I know Jeff Thrasher is doing some work more on the sports turf side of things, and just super awesome people. So that's cool that you were actually there and giving some business to them, because they certainly deserve it.
Yeah.
And you got a pretty sweet little product here too. I mean, there's nothing about this. Now, the only piece of it that I would say would not be just ideal for your situation is, well, it's got a little bit of ammonium sulfate in it, not a lot. So really, I think this is totally fine. I don't see anything bad about it. And you've got relatively low pH, so over time, some of that ferric oxide may be able to do something for you. So yeah, not a bad little gig at all here. I like this.
Yeah. And I mean, I haven't ripped open the bag yet, but it's an SGN of like 80 or something, so it's not going to be sitting on top of the turf for 3 weeks like the triple 13 rock salt will be. So at least that's the plan.
So what is, I did not see T-Nex on your list of owned products there. What does your mowing frequency look like on your property?
So I do have T-Nex. I forgot to put that on there. I mean, right now I've been working from home for the past year, so I'm like mowing 3 times a week and hardly cutting anything off because it's, we've had some cooler weather the past couple weeks. Last summer, after I recovered from having COVID, it was like, twice a week. But then when I started using T-Nex at 0.3 ounces, maybe, does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
0.3 ounces, not 3 ounces, 0.3. So I mean, I guess I could cut the grass, once a week if I wanted to. But I was still getting used to using the greens mower. Then the greens mower was down for a while. I had to order some new parts after hitting a sprinkler head with the 14 blade reel. So, a $400 mower turns into a $800 mower really quickly. And then you add a greens catcher, or you add a grass catcher, and that becomes a $1,000 mower, which I think my wife might be watching this now, so sorry.
Oh no.
But when you think about it, $1,000 for a and what kind of mower is that? That's a 220.
It's a 180E.
A 180E. So you have the
So
electric drive on the reel.
yeah, so I mean it's a $10,000 lawnmower.
Yeah, right.
It's a 2012 with like 1,400 hours on it, and I put what, 30 hours a year on it. I cut the grass today. It took me 45 minutes.
So you're back to using the John Deere full time now.
Yeah. So this year I was scalping at 1/4 of an inch earlier this month or last month, I forget. And hit a root. And I had replaced the reel with a 7-blade reel last year and hit a root and bent the new reel that only had about 10 hours on it. And luckily, since I've been playing golf a lot more and become friends, bugging the super at the course I play at, they were able to grind out the bend for me and sharpen the bend knife and fix everything for $100 instead of having to buy another new 7-blade reel. So,
man, that is
those are the
brutal.
things that people don't tell you about when you buy any reel mower, but especially a commercial. The roots that I removed that were sticking above the surface.
Man, that's some bad luck there. I don't even want to tell you how many sticks and kids' toys and random things I've hit with the 220E and just never had that problem.
Yeah, see, I that's my thing is like people cut acres of grass every day with reel mowers. And I've played on golf courses that have pine tree roots on the surface in the fairway. And how am I the guy that hits 2 things and bends 2 reels in like less than an acre? Am I just that bad? And so there's times where I, want to sell it and people like Ryan want to buy it and try to bribe me saying that, I'll get you to play golf somewhere cool up here in Ohio, but you got to bring me this lawnmower.
Yep, that's true.
But then, and I've used the McLean, and, as much as Green Dock might wince, I like it. It's does that make me a wimp? It's easier to turn around. I've gotten a lot better with the John Deere, but it's nice to have 2. And I got the McLean for free, and it's from the 80s, and so, if I ding it, I can take it to the scrapyard. It's not worth getting fixed. And a McLean reel is like $500 or something.
Yeah, I can't believe you've dinged them twice like that. Just based on the stuff I have hit, man. I mean, just ridiculous things I have hit. I feel bad for you, man.
And
I feel bad for you.
I see somebody in the chat, I don't know who William is, saying, it's a greens mower. How many greens have roots in them? I mean, yeah, okay. Thanks, Captain Obvious. But, they use reel mowers in the fairway too.
That's right. They cut the approaches to the greens with a greens mower set to mow a little bit higher, so
Yeah.
that can happen. Oh, by the way, I've cut some crazy things with my mower too. Like, what does a drywall screw mean to you?
Oh, that's a good one. Did that tear everything up?
No, my Toro chopped it into 2 pieces and spit it back out.
That's not. Are you using like some rare forged steel parts though? I could see you ordering stuff from Japan that's been like fashioned and blacksmithed into a
Yeah.
perfect, precise tool.
It's like Rockwell hardness
Actually-
50 or something.
No, actually, that was when I was using the what's it called, the Edge Series reel from Toro. That's like their special $100 more per reel, and that metal on that thing is like ultra hard, and that's combined with the what they call the Edge Max bed knives, which are also highly hardened. So I cut the drywall screw, And then after that, I cut a 1/4-inch bolt with the mower.
Ooh.
Same thing. It made a loud bang.
Aldo said he cut a quarter
and
in half with his California trimmer.
Trouble.
12.5 cents, right,
California-
Aldo?
His California Dremel.
That was
made
some,
12
that was
and a
some
half
Tennessee
cents.
talk. That was Tennessee talk right there.
Yeah.
A Tremel. We cut a quarter with California Tremel. Quarter with
Yeah.
trim.
Yeah.
Sure.
But however, I do remember hitting a chunk of wood that the tree trimmers left in somebody's lawn with the with the Greensmaster. That was not good because that bent the bed knife and caused the spider of the reel to let go of the blade. So that reel was trashed.
Yeah.
And I was pissed.
Brian, I've
that's
done
not a
what you've
cheap
done
fix.
before.
It's not an easy fix either.
No, and if you're, doesn't matter if you're taking it out and replacing it, right? That's a pain in the butt. And notwithstanding the fact that, especially if your bearings are not brand new or close to new, putting that all back up and squaring that reel again is like, you can do it, but if there's any type of play in there,
Yeah.
it just turns into a mishmash, as you start putting it back together and trying to get it. Now, again, at the height of cut you're at, probably not that big of a deal. Green's height, big deal. So
Right.
the bending of the reel, man, I've done that before. I did that when I was like a 15 or 16-year-old kid on the golf course, and I had to fix it myself. That was like my punishment was a guy standing over top of me like a drill sergeant, yelling at me, cussing me out, and saying, do this, do that, do this, do that. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I learned, right?
Yeah.
So never did it again. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Ray, do you have a bed knife facer?
No. You know what I use? I use what they call a power file. And
Like
I
a
clamp.
finger?
Actually, it uses a 1/2-inch by 21-inch belt. And what I do is I clamp the entire bed bar in a vise, and then I recreate the angle on the face of the bed knife. So my bed knives stay extremely sharp at all times.
Yeah, that's
That
one thing that
sounds-
I think people.
Are you having to do all that by touch?
Yes. I do all of
Oh,
that
God.
by I do all of that by touch. It's
I don't even.
because there's like one little thing about me in that I basically sharpen most cutting tools almost freehand. I just follow the angle and I do it.
We're gonna get
That
like
does
a
not surprise me,
community
Ray.
bed knife facer and just send it back and forth across country via FedEx or UPS or something. $400 for a bed knife facer. It'll change your life. It's like it would be the difference between wiping with toilet paper or squirting your butt with a bidet. It's really that much of a big deal. It's life changing. If Chris Gibson's watching, he'll chime in and say something about that too.
But the good thing is, fingers crossed, is that I put 30 hours a year on my mower. Hopefully, as long as I don't hit anything, I can. And my mower, the cutting unit comes off, and so I can take that to the guy at the golf course and pay him $100, and he can relief grind it, spin, relief grind it, and grind the bed knife, and I just go pick it up a week later. Not everyone has that luxury.
No, but that's a good move on your part. I mean, seriously, I tell people that all the time. Is like, make friends with a local golf course. And I know some people try and they fail, or that because it's not the right fit. But that's a huge thing to have in your corner in terms of a superintendent that can give you some pointers, and more importantly, an equipment manager that can help you out of a jam like you got yourself into, and turn a really expensive problem of parts changing into actual mechanic work of
Just
uneffing
fixing it. Just fixing it.
Yes.
Yeah, just fixing it.
No, that's not even fixed. It would be fixed if it was something simple. That had to be completely unthrusted, right?
Yeah. I think he said he spent 2 hours on it.
Not bad. So here's my question for you. This is the one I've been waiting to ask you. I've been thinking about this all week, really, right? So you get the grass, you get the tree, and you got the dogs. Okay? At least one of those things is gonna have to go, right? So what's it gonna be?
I would prefer it to be the tree.
When can we come down and prune it with a stump grinder?
You'll have to talk to my wife about that one.
I'm
I mean,
still
right-
at that. I can sell it. I think so.
I've got
The tree, I mean,
75% of my lawn is good grass. Can
Are
hear
you
the
okay,
train?
DeMay?
where is that train noise coming from? That's freaky. That's like some
Is that
horror
is
movie
that
stuff.
urea commodity showing up in your backyard in Ohio there?
That ain't
That,
me.
Is it
that
zinc
is-
sulfate? Because there's a global shortage on zinc sulfate. If it is zinc sulfate, let me know. Talk to me offline. Shoot me a message. I got some places to broker that.
Sorry, that really is. That's about 200 feet from my window is a train track. And they go by 5 times a day. And there's also a crossing, and that's why they have to honk the horn every time.
That's endearing.
So-
That's it. It reminds me of when I lived in Memphis. When I lived in Memphis, you could not go anywhere in town and not encounter a train at some point. So I didn't think anything about it really.
The whole time we looked at the house, every time we visited it for 2 months, a train didn't go by. The first night we moved in, a train goes by at 3 o'clock, and it sounds like it's coming through the window.
Oh,
What was that?
Lord.
My cousin Vinny, right? Remember my cousin Vinny when they're in the hotel?
And so now it doesn't bother us. It doesn't bother the dogs. Don't even do anything anymore. When you're outside, it is insanely loud. I mean, obviously, that
Telly
makes
said that's
sense
the
because
soul
I'm inside.
train.
I wish.
That's pretty funny.
Going right through
I didn't
Macon.
realize
So
that-
okay, so
I don't.
you didn't realize what?
Oh, go ahead. I didn't
No,
realize
no,
that
what
the
did you-
mic would pick that up.
It was super loud. Like I didn't know if that was outside my. There's a train track maybe 1,000 yards from my house, and you can hear it pretty close. But yeah, that was freaking me out. I didn't know what was going on for a second there. These snozberries taste
in
like
your head, man.
snozberries.
That's right.
That's something. I feel like I'm shooting a YouTube video on my front lawn. I keep looking over my shoulder, like I don't know, weird. Okay, so the tree situation. The only thing that concerns me is the shade, right? So have you ever seen or heard of? And you probably know just from experience, but have you ever looked at one of those apps on your phone that will show you the shade as you move it across the sky? Like you can use your camera and it'll superimpose the sun and the angle of it where it's at, and you can set the date and the time of day. So if you wanted to step out there today and say, hey, what's it going to look like on August 8th at 11 a.m.? And you can see exactly where your shade line is going to be relative to your tree. I don't know if it's worth, trying to prune the tree up at first or whatever, but the shade factor, I don't think it's going to be a complete killer. Like it's not going to be a total deal breaker, but it's definitely going to, over the course of time, have a cumulative effect that ultimately degrades
Yeah.
that lawn. I don't know. I'd be interested to see of like year over year how you do. The second question there is, do you do any Trinexin pack treatments or Primo or T-Nex, for everybody listening? Do you do any of those treatments on the backyard, particularly in the area that's shaded?
Whenever I spray anything, I spray it
Mm-hmm.
over the whole yard. So the shaded area, the patchy area, the dense turf area. And I was doing T-Nex last year, um, every 255 growing degree days at 0.3 ounces.
Wow. Okay. And did you notice any
So,
difference there between shaded, generally shaded areas versus mostly full sun areas in terms of performance, clippings, color, density, anything like that?
mm, I wasn't paying attention at the time.
Well, and that's
I
the
mean,
thing
so
is
like,
like you got the lawn within the lawn, right? You've got the shaded
right.
lawn, and then you've got the other part of your lawn. So I'm just curious of
Yeah.
like if you see big differences now or not.
No, I haven't sprayed any T-Nex this year. But I mean, last year, we're going on a year of laying the sod, from May 15th. And so, it was dense sod for, you know, 4 months. And then over winter is when it got patchy and the dogs would tear it up. And then, you know, so, John, is it possible I put a video in there. I took a time lapse of my yard from my security camera yesterday that shows the shade and the sun tracking across the yard from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, give me a minute. I'll find it.
Okay.
I'll throw kind of a curveball here is that pecan tree leaves are rich in juglone. So they are allelopathic. And
Woo woo.
that may be creating some issues for you as well.
That's what I'm saying is that I think that tree is out of place for not just because of shade canopy, drip line, all that kind of stuff, but the things we're worried about with Bermuda is a couple of things. So the quality of light that gets through there, right? So like you probably read about PAR and DLI when you were looking at TifTuf,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so
I read into DLI and all that stuff.
right, so daily light interval. So that's measuring the intensity of the light and the quality of the light that's coming through, right? So like 400 to 700 nanometers is what we're looking for on turf. And so
Right.
when that lack of quality comes in, it gets filtered out. So the tree picks up the good light, essentially, filters through all the trash that doesn't make it down through, and that's what the turf gets. And so that's one of the main problems that we have. So it's not even so much about, hours a day, it definitely is a concern, but it's also the quality of light that's getting down to it. So
Yeah.
that's one thing. The T-Nex thing, they've done a lot of work on all the warm season grasses. I don't know, Ray, maybe you can speak to this, but I know it's very cultivar specific on hybrid Bermuda grasses in terms of whether T-Nex apps will improve turf quality or not. And what it does in the grasses, the cultivars that do have turf quality improvements, so it just packs those cells in the chlorophyll, the chloroplast inside the cell, or inside the leaves, excuse me, a little bit tighter. So the chlorophyll counts actually go up in some of these ones that perform better under T-Nex. Now there are cultivars that do not perform better. So I think there's a study out there, because I was curious and looked into this a little bit, like TIF Sport versus TIF Grand. TIF Sport did not do very well, with T-Nex regulated in shade, whereas TIF Grand did fine. It actually increased chlorophyll counts, right, by somewhere in the order of like 15%. So again, I'd be curious to just see, one, if there's any research that bears it out. And I couldn't find anything specific to the Trinexin pack question on TifTuf, probably because it's newer and just hasn't been out long enough for them to study that. But I think that'd be interesting to compare that. And then the second piece is just improving overall light quality. Now, TifTuf does have a relatively low DLI. So when we look at that and say, okay, how much light and quality light does it need for a given day for it to grow and be happy? Like, what's the minimum level for that? It's actually on the lower end of the spectrum for most Bermuda grasses, most hybrid Bermuda grasses. So that in and of itself, I think, helps you out to a certain extent, but you're always going to struggle with it. And so I'm not saying go cut down the tree and, be that guy who's also the environmental engineer. I can't believe you. But you gotta. It's one of those things. Trees and turf, fine turf and trees don't mix. Turf and trees,
Right. I mean,
okay. If you don't really care about what's like, there's a fine line there.
there's a reason there aren't trees on golf greens, and generally trees close to golf greens, or non-high pruned trees near the fairway or in the middle of the fairway. You know,
Yeah.
Oh, I agree.
I
That's
understand it.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where I know the answer. I just don't want to
haven't
accept
accepted it
the
yet.
answer. Yeah.
This is your support group, Brian. We're here for you.
Is the bulk of the
Cut the tree down.
canopy on that side of the yard where it's thinnest, along the fence line,
No.
or is that just dog activity? But it looks like in this picture right here, that's where the density of the canopy is.
So the sun tracks basically from the lower left to the upper right.
Yep.
Over the course of the day. And so, I mean, the canopy is kind of level along parallel to the fence line. The fence
And
that's
rather
in the top
low.
of the picture.
And kind of low.
Relatively,
I mean,
yeah.
I'd,
And so basically after noon, after 12, and as the sun continues to go, it's essentially shining into the whole tree. And that's, so this is obviously as the sun is rising, and then, there's a timer. So 12 o'clock is right now. And then this is all after
Wow.
12.
Wow.
And so in the very beginning,
lot.
you can see when it's in infrared at the very beginning, and it's like dark, and there's the dark spots. That's
Yeah.
obviously, that's the dirt where there's
Yeah, I was
no
gonna
grass.
say that's an interesting on the IR picture there of what you do get to see there. So
Yeah.
that's just where the dogs are mostly. So this is a combination of shade and dog traffic in that far corner. Yeah or no?
Yes. And then also the upper left along the fence is very
Mhm.
thin because of shade. But yeah, that the upper right is mainly from shade, but also some from dog traffic.
Looks like the road's out there on the right hand side, so the dogs like to go up and greet the neighbors. Is that what that is? They're just running along that fence.
Not really. I mean, generally when they're out, we're out with them, but we sit on the steps of the deck in the lower left and essentially just throw the ball from the lower left to the short side of the fence on the right there to let them run as long of a run as possible. And then they jump and land, and lunge into the ground and tear it up. I thought about it the other day. It's like having the two dogs. It's like having a U12 travel soccer team that's not potty trained.
Generally potty trained. I mean, at
So-
least they're pissing on the field instead of, outside behind the goal or something. So they got that going for them.
Yeah.
You're not going to waste any time coming out of the game to take a piss. Like you just stop on the field right there, after you take that corner kick and just drop trout and go for it. I respect that about
Augustus
dogs.
had a good point. Have you considered landscaping kind of the perimeters there?
But that means less grass.
It does. Just curious.
I'll tell you what I think.
It seems like you have a high affinity for the tree, so just kind of throwing some curveball options.
Yeah, and I'm one of those people where I cannot handle crappy looking sad grass, and if it's because of a tree that can't be gotten rid of, I just as soon have foliage plants that don't mind the shade, because a corner or an area of sad looking grass, I immediately tell people two options: lose the tree, or we border this off and put foliage plants in the shaded areas. I mean, because
The
Yeah.
hard thing with it though is that it's growing underneath the pecan tree. So again, that whole juglone thing is back into play. So you'd have to be very careful about what you put there. I don't think you're going to be able to grow camellias and azaleas very well in those areas. So, and I know that's a bit of a Georgia staple. That's what I would be reaching for if I were in the area, gardenias
Yeah.
and stuff. So, um, the more and more we kind of beat this into submission, yeah. I mean, it's just we're gonna have to cut that tree down, whether you like it or not.
I
I
got
mean,
one
is
more
is
option.
this
No
is this a
boy.
thing where I should have picked Zoysia a year and a half ago instead of Bermuda? But I mean, I didn't know.
I think you'd
Or is
personally, I think you'd be in a worse situation just because of the traffic from the dogs. This would look, in my mind, this would be worse.
yeah.
I would not enjoy Zoysia in this situation. This is where Zoysia creates that false sense of security that, oh, it's more shade tolerant, you'll love it in this scenario, and then you get into it and it continues to die in the same spaces over and over and over, and then you sod it 3 or 4 times, and before you know, you're $4,000 into this one section of your backyard, and nothing has improved. And not only
Yeah.
are you $4,000 in on sod and shit, now you're also spraying fungicide every other day, and it's just it's a guessing game at that point.
Yeah. You see,
Right.
Brian's yard is the kind of yard where this yard gets a lot of the high dollar fungicides because it's walled in by a fence and it's shaded by a tree. And so, you know what this looks like to me, Matt? If this were Zoysia, this would be a large patch lawn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
This would be the large patch lawn. This is called ProStar Exteris Lexicon. I mean, send it. I mean, seriously. And by the way, this is the kind of lawn that I would have in Hawaii that would need a butt ton of fungicides in the fall. That's just it.
What? I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, I've been through only one fall, and it was with relatively healthy turf. We're coming up on 11 and a half months, so we're all on this ride together, man.
No, we're not on this ride together. Don't suck me into your bullshit here, Brian. We're
You
going to cut
stand
that
alone.
tree down, and you're going to watch us with a smile on your face. Speaking of work to do around properties there, before we start to close this out, can we talk a little bit about the golf green?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's talk about it. Kind of give us a background here, and then we'll
Ry-
jump into it.
Ryan forgot about that. He's too busy with his real job to worry about his, dream projects of coming down to Georgia, and turning
I
my
can't
parents'
wait.
turning my parents' old pool into a putting green. So my parents live, 5 minutes away, and they have I forget. I have the measurements somewhere.
It's huge. It's
But
massive.
Yeah,
It's
it's an
it's
old.
basically
like
how
a-
old is that swimming pool? It's like an old concrete swimming pool, isn't it?
yeah, so it's an old concrete swimming pool. The house was built in the 50s. The pool's from the 50s. Um, it's probably 20 by 40 and 9 feet deep at the
Jeez.
deepest. And for the past, when I was growing up, we maintained it and swam and stuff. And then after I went off to college, my brother had already gone off to college. My dad has been using it as a,
Fill pit.
landfill, a mulch pit without mulching things.
What does the environmental engineer in you feel when you see things like that? Do you have a physical reaction to it, or is it just whatever? I'm curious.
I mean, I'm perfect. I mean, it obviously leaks because it's not full of water after 10 years of rain. So it can't be, it is not, crazy expensive to turn it back into a pool for, my parents that would hardly use it or not use it. Um, so I think it would be a great idea. I mean, essentially, it's if you can break up the bottom and basically burn all that stuff on the inside, removing all the plastic and things like that, I don't see an issue.
Yeah, that's what I would want to do is get in there, remove as much of the debris, or do something with the debris. Burning it's great too. I'm a fan of fire. And jackhammer out the bottom, and that's totally doable. DeMay, in terms of complexity, when you see something like this on a scale of 1 to rock hard, how do you feel when you think about golf greening this?
I don't feel particularly concerned. I mean, I think if it depends on how much movement you want in the green, how many undulations and things like that. That might present a little bit more of a problem. But most of those would have to be on the interior of the green. So the only thing that would suck would be like, you build a little wall around it so that if you jack one 30 feet past the hole, it's not going to go run off into the backyard down to the swale behind it. But overall, it's the same as building any other kind of putting green. We have a cavity, right, that we, in most cases, excavate out and then apply a formula that's, depending on what type of greens construction method you use. But typically, if we're using a USGA system, is pretty much standard across the board, right? In terms of if we were building that green in New Mexico or if we were building that green in South Georgia, it would be the same. The materials might change just based on location just a little bit, but the specs of those materials are the same. So I feel pretty good about it. I think that, it's not a dumb idea. I don't know what else you do with this thing other than just bust it all up, with a jackhammer on the end of a mini X and just fill it all in, and then
Right.
some poor SOB who buys the house off of Brian's dad goes to dig in irrigation lines for 3 days and is hitting pieces of concrete bigger than his Buick, so Bryan could, pass on what he has sown, right, and dealt with. But
Right.
I think in this case, going out there, the construction side would be ridiculously fun because I can already see Ray on Skype telling us we're doing it wrong. I can see Matt in a lawn chair with all of his buttons unbuttoned. There would be no buttons buttoned up. There is no 2-button rule when you're in Macon, Georgia, and you are drinking whiskey straight out of the bottle and swearing at us. And I see Bryan and I actually doing all the work, and Bryan out there with his 4-foot level checking all the slopes to make sure that we don't get greater than a 3% slope because we might make the green a little too fast when it's all said and done. But yeah, you go out there, you throw something out, something a little bit more forgiving out there in terms of maintenance. Tahoma is actually one that they're using at putting green height, and I think I wouldn't maintain this like super low or have an ultra dwarf in there just because it would be a maintenance nightmare. But if you had something a little bit more forgiving, like a Tahoma, and you mowed it at like 150 or even 175, like Brian's dad's not going to care if that thing's rolling like a 7 on the stem. Like he's just wanting to jack 90-yard shots and go out there and try to make a 2-putt, So I think a backyard par 2.5 would be pretty cool. I'd be down for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I
that
just
would,
looked. I just looked it
neat.
up, and it's 22 by 56 is what I measured last year. So 1,000 square feet.
That's a big cement
It would
pond,
be
as Jake Lampett would say.
yeah. I mean, it would be fun, but then, my dad is not gonna mow every day. Maybe. I mean, he's not retired yet, but maybe he will. But just like most of the stuff in my life, it's pipe dreams.
Bryan, you just got to sell it. It's all about you. It's all on you to convince dear old dad that this needs to happen, and you have a bunch of degenerate friends that can actually make it happen,
He said we could do it if we paid for it. And
If we paid for it.
we raised $400 last year, and then I had to give everyone their money back.
Hey, that was only because of COVID. That was it was bad timing.
That's right.
I think we can get it together. You still need to work on the free fill, and I think the rest of it can come together. There's no question about it. No question
Right.
about it.
I was looking for the pictures of the putting green where I photoshopped you in the boots all over it, but I can't find that.
I can pull that up somewhere. I've got it.
I think my camera died. I gotta slap
It
the
did die.
battery in.
In any event, though, it was a great idea. It was literally, again, just going back to the community aspect that Matt started with, is that this started off as an innocuous post on this lawn Discord that we all frequent, and it just kind of ran from there. Now, I will say that I instigated much of it, and I still think it's possible. It's just a matter of if there's a will, there's a way, and there's more than enough people that would love to come spend a long weekend doing this with and for you, if we can get it all
Right.
lined up. So I personally am looking forward to hopefully the day in 2022 that we can literally crash at your parents' house and maybe even puke on the lawn.
Hey, more nutrients.
William asked a good question. He said, if we come and build it, can we burn the tree after?
I mean, they're
Listen,
not in the same
maybe
spot.
we can. Well, they're 5 minutes,
minutes
away,
away?
right? I mean, can
Yeah.
we experiment with some high voltage and take the tree down that way?
Ooh.
Like man-made lightning. Is that what you
Yes.
mean? Sure. I don't know.
Okay. I mean, because I'd say that would be a cool way to bring the tree down. Is
Of
to-
my of my 4.5 YouTube videos on a channel that I thought, I mean, I wasn't trying to do anything with it, but it was terrible. The very first one is about cutting down. I cut a limb that made my yard even shadier than it is now, believe it or not. Cut that down and cut a maple tree down that had the most insanely exposed above ground roots that you would ever see. I put a picture in here. And we cut the tree down, and it may or may not have bounced off the power lines before it hit the ground, but we are
Are you talking about these roots?
yeah. So this was obviously before I had a real mower. This was some patchy St. Augustine. But that was another tree that was growing on top of bricks and concrete and stuff like that.
boy, I tell you what. Well, listen, Bryan, what questions do you have for us? You got the wrecking ball crew here. What questions do you have for us?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I've put down 0.1 pounds of nitrogen from DEF 3 weeks ago. That's all I've done this year. I've got 160 pounds of lime on hand. I've got that Lebanon fertilizer. I've got another 40 pounds of triple 13. I've got feature. What should be my plan if I want to continue to mow at 375 where I am now? 7/16.
Leave the triple 13 in the barn, first of all. just because one, you don't need the phosphorus, and two, you don't need that prill size out there, right? Like
Yeah.
that's just you've grown out of that fertilizer, right?
Yeah.
Those are the husky jeans you used to wear, and now you've grown up, you got a little thinner, you hit puberty, and bam, you're wearing those slim fits now, dog. You got that 90 SGN out there, and you're living free. Might not even have to wear underwear anymore. I don't know what you're packing. So it really just depends on one, how frequently do you want to fertilize? How frequently do you want to get out there and do the work? That's my first question.
Right. Oh, you want me to answer now?
Yes.
That was a question. Yes, that was an interrogative statement.
I mean, see, I've never used quote unquote slow release fertilizer before. So you know,
So okay,
I
so
put
here's
out
here's
a third a pound a month
Mhm.
of the other stuff.
And you guys can jump in and beat me up for this and say it all you want, but if it were me and I had that 18-3-18, I you can roll out there with whatever you want up to a pound, but I think you try and go half a pound, every 6-8 weeks, and then the rest of the time I'd be DEF and feature like every 2 weeks. So tenth of a
Yeah.
pound of N from the DEF, low rate of feature, the 3-ounce rate on feature, and roll with that, and you're going to be fine. The whole idea here is that the granular serves as your base, right? So methylene is going to break down through microbial activity. It's okay to say in this case, don't get upset. Microbial activity, right? And then that's a function of soil temperature and soil moisture. Okay, so
Right.
every time you get a rainfall, if you continue to keep it watered and have an adequate level of soil moisture, which is something I think you wanted to ask about too, adequate level of soil moisture, you're going to get good, solid, dependable release out of that. I love that nitrogen source because it is very, very predictable in terms of the response that you're going to get. Unlike a polymer coat that, if you get a whole bunch of rain, a whole bunch of heat, you're going to definitely see some surges of growth, no question about it. So again, the granular is your base, right? And that's pushing things along at a big picture level. And then your DEF/feature apps are basically maintenance, right? And you can kind of time those up based on weather, based on the growth patterns that you see, right? So if you're in the middle of summer and you notice, hey, you know what, like I normally get almost 3/4 of a bucket when I mow with the 180E, and I only got like half a bucket, might put a little more DEF in that tank next time, right? So try to match nitrogen to growth and try to hit your optimum, right? Optimum growth rate as close as you can, and adjust the gas pedal and the brake based on that. And that's going to be your DEF feature app.
Yeah.
The only thing I
That
would
makes sense.
say a little bit different is I would just make sure you keep it under regulation, depending on how much maintenance you want to put into it, right? It would just make life easier for you, so that way you're not out there, every 3 days or so getting a cut on it. So
Yeah.
also
I should. Yeah.
I know Ryan was thinking that, but he didn't say it, so that's why I went ahead and said it.
Shit.
I mean, that's something that was good. Well, when I got sick last year and was out for 2 weeks, uh, but I'm good. I mean, I work on a computer all day. I can look at the Greenkeeper app, till my head turns blue and see if I'm tracking to 255 and know when to go out and spray more T-Nex and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, so between that, a little feature and a little DEF, and your 1838, I mean that's a rock solid program right there. And you want a little more color out of it, then maybe dial up your fert rate just a hair. It's growing a little bit too aggressively for you. Maybe dial that back. Maybe just stick to your feature and pull out the DEF, or up your growth regulator rate. You can always do that too. And just remember that when you're dealing with hybrid Bermuda can be a little bit funny towards growth regulator. But if you already have it under regulation, you can slowly build up very slightly at a time your growth regulator rate up to a point without causing a whole lot of bronzing.
Okay. So he said a pound of N every 2 months from the Lebanon stuff. Is that what he said?
Yeah, or you could apply that monthly at a half pound in.
Okay.
I actually recommend a half a pound of N every month, because when you're dealing with something like that Lebanon fertilizer with the methylene urea, that fertilizer actually does extremely well applied often, but at low rates, because then what happens is your nitrogen release then just stays very constant all throughout the growing season, rather than surging, tailing off, and then starting all over again. So I actually like, various slow release nitrogen sources, just not at a
Yeah.
full pound at a time. Otherwise you're going to be in that situation where you give it a hit of nitrogen and, oh Lord, not even your growth regulator is enough to keep it under control. You're out there cutting grass every day, if not twice a day.
Right. That's
Right?
the only thing. The only thing from that is, I mean, I'll have to figure it out. Is my 2001 Scott's Deluxe spreader with the plastic wheels, putting out
Mhm.
3 pounds per thousand of a 90 SGN fertilizer. We'll have to dial that thing back.
Oh, you can do that.
can also-
I mean, that's the SGN helping you out right there. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, because what I also recommend is there is no shame in you keeping the fertilizer spreader setting light and doing a crisscross pattern so that half of it is applied in one direction and then the other half is applied in the other direction. There's no, in other words, we won't put you on the wall of lawn care donkeys for doing that. Okay, we won't do it. I mean, in fact, I highly recommend that in cases where the application is critical, you apply half of the product in one direction and the other half in the other so that you increase the chance of the application being as uniform as you can get it. So, yeah.
I mean, it's
go ahead.
it's
Choke down the
5,000 square
spreader.
feet. Yeah, I mean, for me to spread fertilizer on 5,000 square feet, it takes like 7 minutes. I mean, it's not. If I have to go over it 7 times, it doesn't really matter.
Hardly, right? No.
If it takes you 7 minutes to spread fertilizer on a 5,000 square foot yard, we're gonna wrestle in the backyard at some point.
Is that too fast?
I'm not
or
going to
too
hit that
slow?
production.
That is so slow.
You're not gonna-
you're never gonna make $1,000 a day. It's
Yeah,
some
you're not gonna hit
inside
your
baseball
quota.
and some lawn care stuff, dude. I'm
mean-
teasing
Yeah, you're not
with
going to hit your quota.
I was just making up 7 minutes, but maybe it's 2 minutes. Who knows?
Just
two
think of it as
minutes-
qualifying.
2 minutes should be, yeah. You get, if it's a 5,000 square foot yard, you get about 5 minutes to spread it and then pull it back and do any spot spraying, and then you're on to the next property. Do you understand? You better. That's what we're going to be practicing over the course of the next year.
I get confused
actually-
when my neighbor has True Green and she has 600 square feet and they pull out a Lesco spreader and just do like one pass and then the truck drives off. And I was like, what is he spreading? And what did he put out? 4 tablespoons of fertilizer?
Listen, if you don't know, you don't know, and I'm not giving away the secret right here.
Yeah.
Unimpressed. Yeah.
I mean,
All right. Do you feel like you got anything you can stump us with real quick, and then we're going to start wrapping this up? Can you stump us with something? Throw something out there and see. If you got nothing, you got nothing, and we'll move on to the after show.
Not having done a soil test on my dad's yard, it's 31,000 square feet of Bermuda, common Bermuda and St. Augustine. What would be a plan for him? He's got a 31 gallon tow behind sprayer and the same Scott's spreader. So should I give him that triple 13 I have?
You can, or better yet, I would pick a turf type and run with it. What percentage of Bermuda is Bermuda and St. Augustine?
Probably 25% St. Augustine underneath pine trees, and out in the open is Bermuda.
Okay, so I would run the 18-3-18 as just a general fertilizer there.
That's too expensive. Too expensive. He's getting the rock salt stuff.
Okay, he can do that too.
Yeah.
No problem there. You can give him the rock salt stuff, and yeah, put it down at. You can do the same thing. Put it down at a half pound a month, and just call it good. If he likes to cut grass at an exceptionally high level, then go ahead and put down a pound of in a month, and call that good. And then eventually get a soil test and cut out that phosphorus if you don't need it, because really you're just spending money if you don't. You're in Georgia, so chances are you're going to be low potassium anyway. And most properties I see, at least on the center part or western part of Georgia, are all low phosphorus. So I'm not super familiar with that southeastern part of Georgia you're in. In Augusta, we were kind of all over the map when I lived there. So it was hard for me to make a generalized recommendation there one way or another. But yeah, you can definitely, if you need to burn up that triple 13, that's a way to do it.
Okay. No, I appreciate it. I mean, obviously, I know where to find you guys, so that's why I have
Oh, you do.
minimal questions, because my questions get answered, daily. And you can only have so
When are you
many
going to get back on the
questions
YouTube train?
probably never.
Oh, when we build the putting green.
Yeah, when we build the putting green, and we'll get Ryan Noren to get some drone action and some I film everything on a iPhone 6S, so it's not.
This is so cheap.
I cracked the screen while watching the Masters 2 weeks ago. Other than that,
Did you throw it?
No, I was trying to watch the honorary teeing off at 7 a.m. Set it up on the counter, and it slid off and hit the ground.
I thought you got mad at Phil Nicholson not playing real well and decided to chunk it at the wall.
No, I don't like Phildo.
What? What's wrong with you?
He's a fig jam.
Golly.
I can't say what fig jam means here.
All right. Well, we're going to round this out. Bryan, I wish you would just record some videos this year, at least of progress on the backyard, so we can see and kind of give everybody that's watching right now an opportunity to take a look at it and see how things continue to move on, especially in relationship with the tree that you got here. Speaking of what's coming up, I'll tell you right now, as a crew, one of the things we are working on is we're working on an audio version of a show that we're going to be calling the Burn and Return. Surprise, Ray. I have not looped you in on this yet because it's kind of a budding idea, but I've got a 1 month kind of game plan to launch here. And so that'll be hosted over on Podbean. Also, for those of you that are interested, I upload these shows now as a podcast. And so you can go to your favorite podcast host, whatever that is, Spotify, Apple, or Google, or whatever the case may be, and search for The Grass Factor, and you're going to find it there. So anyway, beyond that, we're going to have another show called Burn and Return coming up. That's going to be focused more on up-to-date research that's coming out in the industry. And yep, you can see over here on this is on Apple Podcasts. You can see where we've got those uploaded, and so this one will be put up later this week. Maybe even on Monday, somewhere at some point, this will be uploaded as an episode, and so we can all hop on there and yell at Bryan through the microphone on our headset that we're listening to or whatever. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead. Huh?
Can we edit out the train coming by?
No, we're not going to edit a damn thing.
All in.
You've lost your mind.
You can hear the dog.
We're going to wrap this up, and we're going to move on to the show after the show. And for those of you that I've seen a lot of questions about the show after the show after the show is for the members only. And once you join, there is a link in the members tab that you hit, and you can go to the community tab, and you will have a members only post there that will give you the link to the Discord, the private Discord that we have. And then from there, you head on over to Dirty Deeds, and the link will exist for 10 minutes alone, and then it will disappear for all of eternity, never to be seen again. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Bryan, thank you for being a guest on the show, and we look forward to really having the next level of conversation on the show after the show. Ryan, Ray, y'all have any closing remarks?
I think we just
Bryan,
about covered it.
Yeah, we did. I think we covered a lot of it. That you need to start politicking. The tree probably needs to get at least pruned, if not cut down. So lay the groundwork. Get that sold. And no, like I said, thanks for trying and continuing to, even in the face of your diminished capacity or willingness to spend money. You still have a great looking lawn, dude, and I really appreciate that you make it look good doing it the way you do it. So proud of you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Well, we're headed
all
on
I got.
over to there, and we will catch you on the flip side.